A collection of ghost stories. Volume 1. A novel by Neil Wesson. Chapter 9. Terminal. The droning planes of the Luftwaffe flew in formation over the bomb-damaged streets of London. For a period in 1940, the German aircraft bombed London, not only during the hours of darkness, but also in daylight. The sound of air raid sirens were the most common sound on the streets of the capital for a period of 1 month. On this Thursday, the disjointed continuity of the city's life continued as normal as one may expect. Alison Mabel picked her way through the rubble on her way to work. She was an assistant in the department store Fortnum and Mason. The sun was shining in the sky, but was obscured by the rising smoke from the smoldering fires from the half-ruined city. Though the carnage lay all around, she was happy to be out in the sunshine, hazy as it was. Much of her recent life had been spent in air raid shelters at her work, or with the 2 other generations of her family, huddled together at home. Not all the family were there. The 2 male members of the family, her brother and father, were away somewhere in the world fighting for freedom. None of them knew where exactly, the letters never said. Brother Harry was away in Africa and father, Ernest, was in Europe somewhere. Her moment of happiness was again disturbed as the familiar sound of the air raid klaxon. Looking up into the sky, that all too familiar formation of German aircraft was overhead. Looking round for salvation, she made straight toward the nearest bolt hole, Bank Underground Station. "Quickly," said the warden on the gate as he ushered in before slamming the door closed behind him. Deep down in the bowels of the network of tunnels she came out onto the platform. The usual sight was of many sleeping bags placed end to end along the length of the platform. Today, though, a different sight met her eyes. The Londoners down here today were all awake. After all, it was the daytime. Many stood chatting to one another, others remained seated indulging themselves in idle gossip. As far as she could see, it was mainly the men who stood, smoking and discussing the war, not that there were many men down there. The males that were there all wore suits. She assumed they must be some sort of official persons exempt from the call to arms. The underground system didn't operate during air raids, so many people sat on the edge of the platform, legs dangling down towards the track. Alison sat at the very end of the platform. Next to her sat a young man around the same age as herself. He was dressed in a suit and carried with him an old briefcase, and of course his gas mask. As Alison sat down, he passes her a polite glance, but didn't engage in any form of conversation. "Sorry," offered Alison as she sat down, nudging him with her elbow as she did so. "It's okay, I've had worse," he replied. His voice was kindly. Once settled, she looked around the densely populated station. All forms of expression could be seen in that short tunnel. Happiness, sorrow, despair, all could be seen on the faces of the people in that room. The face of the young man sitting next to her showed sorrow, almost abject despair. "I'm Alison, by the way," she said, trying to spark a conversation into life. Maybe she could cheer him up. "David," he replied. "Do you work here, in the city?" The question was innocent enough. "Yes." "The clothes, you mean?" "Clothes?" She couldn't tell what job he did by his clothes. "Not in uniform. That's what you mean, isn't it?" "Well, it's not my fault." His voice almost broke. No, Alison has hit a nerve in him. "I didn't mean anything like that, really. I get used to it wherever I go. Women looking at me in the street, pointing and whispering. No, it's none of my business." Alison tried to reassure him that she had meant by the comment. "I suppose your husband is away fighting, and you want to know why I'm not with him? I'm not even married." A pause fell on the conversation. Alison thought to re-engage the intercourse, but decided against it. The conversation was over. Then all of a sudden he spoke again, this time in a steadier voice. "I have a horseshoe kidney," he said in a quiet tone, before turning to face her. "Sorry?" Had she heard correctly? "Most people have 2 kidneys. I only have 1. Because of that I couldn't join up. Apparently you need 2 kidneys to kill Germans." He was full of self-pity for himself. "Oh, I see," said Alison. She felt sorry for him. Did she wonder, though, was he that disappointed not to be going to fight? "I'm doing my bit for the war effort," he continued, in a happier tone, "working at the War Ministry." "Oh yes, that sounds exciting." Alison tried to encourage his happier dispassion. "What do you do there?" "Just a clerk, more of a runner actually." He was once again spiraling into depression. The smallest cogs keep the biggest machines running. "That's true." He smiled. A huge muffled bang came directly from above them. A bomb had landed nearby. The lights flickered, and dust accompanied by bits of tile fell from the curved ceiling of the tunnel. All the conversations on the platform simultaneously stopped. Everyone looked upward. They all knew that was close. How many direct hits could a building take? In the eerie silence, the sound of bombs could be heard exploding on the surface of the city. Slowly the talking started again. "When will it stop?" asked Alison. "Soon," he replied. "Soon." We are working on system called RAD. He stopped himself. Sorry, can't say. I understand. Official secrets and all that. Walls have ears, you know. Once again the conversation fell into an uneasy silence. You said you weren't married? He asked tentatively. No, I'm not. Who'd have me? Anyone, I would think. I jump at the chance of. All of a sudden he became self-conscious, blushing. His sentence faded. Much to Allison's disappointment. She attempted to recapture the moment. Really, would you? Yes, I suppose I would, yes. His speech stumbled out, a nervous edge in his voice. A breakthrough had been made. He had never come to this point with a woman before. He was at that point. Did he go in for the kill, as it were, or would he back away? Allison waited with eager anticipation for the question. The answer she knew would be yes. It never came. These days things are difficult, aren't they? The station once again rocked with another aerial bombardment as she spoke. Yes, it's hard. You see, it's, yes? She wanted to know more about him. My family were killed in the Blitz 4 nights ago. The house was flattened. They didn't have time to make it to the shelter, so they sat under the stairs. It took a direct hit. Nothing was left. Allison could say nothing to him. She had up to now been spared any personal tragedy. She placed her hand on his, and her head on his shoulder. This poor man had lost everything. There's nothing left for me now. No family, no home, nothing. What could she do? What could she say? Allison felt completely helpless. Sometimes I think that I'm not long for this world. I would have been there, but I got stuck in Westminster Station during the raid. I feel as though I'm dead already. Not another word was said until the all-clear sounded 20 minutes later. As the orderly evacuation of the station took place, Allison and the young man remained seated next to one another. As the warden ushered the last of the people out, he saw the two sitting together. Come on, you two, back to work. As they stood, the young man handed Allison his business card. John Gilbert was his name. Can I see you after work tonight? He asked. Yes, of course, Allison said with a smile. She led the way up the stairs toward the daylight. On exiting the station, she almost choked on a cloud of smoke and brick dust. Putting her head down, she ran through the gray cloud. Get out of there, love. You might get killed, said a stranger's voice. She felt a hand grab her arm and pull her to one side. She turned to see the entrance to the station flattened. Only the arched doorway remained. A sense of shock came over her, but she spluttered. Calm down, said the voice. John, where's John? Who? There's no one there. Her eyes focused on the source of the voice. It was one of London's firemen. She looked around once more for John. He was nowhere to be seen. John, he's in there, she told the fireman. Panic filled her voice as she pointed toward the pile of bricks that stood where the station had been. If he was in there when that bomb hit it, then he's dead. But the all clear has just sounded. What was this man talking about? She had just come out of the station, and no bomb had just hit it. Here it's in the sketch. The fireman took a copy of the newspaper out of his pocket and handed it to Allison. Boy, you, he shouted at someone on the other side of the street before running off toward them. Allison stood in the middle of the road. Rubble lay all around her. Fires ragged where gas supplies were breached, and walls collapsed in the ruined buildings. She saw none of it. On the front cover of the sketch, she read the story of how bank stations suffered a direct hit in the latest round of bombings. The gates at the entrance to the tube station had been either left open or blown off by another blast. By 1,000 to 1 chance, another falling bomb had deflected off of a building and shot straight down into the deep underground tunnels. The station collapsed in on itself, killing everyone sheltering in the building. If these events were in today's press, then it must have happened yesterday. This was surely impossible. She had just been. Allison grabbed a pacing policeman. Is the station reopened yet? She asked in a daze. No, he said. I don't think it will ever reopen. It's completely entombed itself. With no reply from the young women, he started to continue on his way. Allison grabbed his sleeve. When? She asked with tears in her eyes. During the daylight raid, yesterday, he said as he walked off down the street. The end.